vehicles for the so.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's Committee of the Whole meeting.
Jim Barrett,
Here.
Barry Harper,
Here.
Johnson, here, Steve Lee, Megan Michael, here, Kathy Knight, on Ackley.
Please rise for the pledge.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's time for citizens to speak. Anybody want to speak? No one here to speak. Annie's up first with finance.
Here we go. All right, good evening, everyone. Okay. So first, we're going to give a little bit of an update on finances through the first quarter of FY22. For state and local funding, we've been receiving our evidence-based funding as scheduled. Oh, let me pull out my old got that first. Okay. Can you hear me? We've been receiving our evidence-based funding as scheduled on the monthly, two times a month, just under $300,000. The mandated categoricals for first quarter have been factors that we have received between the ed and transportation funds is about $239,000. For our 2020 property tax levy, through the end of September, we have received $22.7 million up to $23.3 million. We received another distribution of $180,000 this past Friday, which brought our remaining outstanding balance down to about 1.9%. We'll continue to receive those taxes into December, and then after that it tapers off. And we won't receive any from January into May. So this is where we kind of bank it, so to speak. So in quarter year-to-date for the ed fund on a cash basis, year-to-date in revenue we've received $8.6 million, and again that's primarily the property taxes of $7.3 million. For expenditures, we've expended $3.5 million, leaving a surplus of revenue to expenditures of just over $5 million. We're pretty in line with our normal expenditures in the ed fund for this quarter. Primarily, you'll notice that our heaviest purchases are in purchase services, and that's for a lot of our tech subscriptions and the annual fees. Those are the other things that are heavy. And also our non-capitalized equipment, this is where we purchase a lot of our Chromebooks and things to get our year started. In our operations and maintenance fund on a cash basis, we've received $1.1 million in revenue and expended $574,000. Again, similar to our ed fund, we've expended about $300,000 in purchase services, and again, that's for a lot of those maintenance things and things that we do over the summer to get ourselves started. Capital outlay, we've expended $84,000. That's prior to the HVAC project that is just about completed. And for our transportation fund, we've received total revenue of $619,000. This is including state funding that had come in for our fourth quarter of last year. So this, again, is on a cash basis. We've not received any of our state funding in our transportation fund yet for this year. And we've expended $569,000. More than half of that is for our buses. So otherwise, we're tracking pretty in line with where we see for the other expenditures. Moving forward to our tax levy, it seems a little early to talk about this, but as Dan and I had mentioned, we only have one meeting in November and one again in December, and we've got our projections from the assessor's office, so we thought, okay, well, let's bring this now. So ultimately, we have been projecting about new property for our long-term plan budget of about $1 million. We're being really conservative with that. We're at just under $2 million projected in new property from the assessor's office. Total EAD is estimated at $433 million. That's up $20 million from last year, which is pretty much the sign of the times. If you follow real estate at all, obviously it's pretty much in line with that. As that factors out, with the CPI 1.4% that was from December of 2020, we're estimating 1.6% increase to our cap fund for our 2021 levy. So if you recall last year, that ended up being about 2.72%, and that's primarily due to a CPI of 2.3%, and the balloon levy to 3.5%. If you guys are comfortable with that, I plan to bring that for November again, just leaving it at 3.5. If you wanted to do a little lower, we could probably do that. Again, it'd be a pretty significant change to get to a 1.86 to a 3.5. So we do still have some wiggle room, and the only thing that would really change that is anything that changes within the property, which we don't foresee happening. So if you like, I would bring the 3.5. If you want to think of something, another number, we can always do it a little bit lower too. But really that's up to you guys. We need to adopt a tentative levy at the November 16th meeting. We'll adopt our final levy on December 14th. And the only other thing is we have been talking about potential to abate taxes at some point. Dan and I discussed pretty much at length that now is not the time. We're just getting out of TAWs. We really need to keep a good eye on what's happening with funding this year, as well as other projects and things that we may see coming down the line. So we think that there's future considerations to potentially do that, but now's not the time. Also, last year was our last abatement of the other taxes for the park properties, and you will not see that in any of the stuff that we do with our levy this year. Cash flow, on a cash flow basis, FY20's low point in that report that we're all roughly in the spring, and they were all negative. That's why we borrowed TWs. Last year we were conservative again due to the fact that we were in a pandemic. We were uncertain of exactly the property taxes that were coming in and that would be coming in, as well as whether the state funding was going to be solid and we were receiving it on time. The actual low point in the borrow $2 million last year was $1.8 million, so we could have exceeded by $1 last year. We anticipate on a conservative basis again about a $2.2 million low point, and that will be in the late game just before we receive our property tax distribution. So needless to say, as we had talked about before, we do not anticipate issuing TAWs this year at all. We'll continue obviously to around cash flow.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Awesome.
It's really awesome when you see where we come from, and I hate to belabor, but I just like you guys to see, there's a lot of work to get there, but it really, I think, went pretty fast.
2 years ahead of schedule?
2 years ahead of schedule, correct.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
So, I would say there's a lot that went into that, but at the same time, I felt like it went pretty fast. I hope you guys feel like that too. And I think we just really need to analyze where we're going from here to determine, where we feel comfortable. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into just after the first year. For personnel, there's a couple little updates that we felt was important to bring to your attention. We had a huge deal of time hiring subs and retaining subs and bringing subs back that we've had in the past. I spoke with Deanna about this as well, and just, we've been recruiting. I met with several. Never really had to interview substitutes before, but I found as though they were interviewing me as opposed to me interviewing them. I had a gentleman who came in and said, well, I have 2 other interviews today alone, so I'll have to get back to him whether or not I want to work for you. So after all of that consideration, Jen and I spoke about, really just valuing the rates, made some comparisons with all the local neighboring districts, and with his approval, we did increase these rates this year. And it's really just for this year, we're going to use other funding in order to do that, and then next spring, we'll bring to you guys recommendations to determine whether or not we should continue with those. But we felt like it was really important to move on those, so that's why we did do it before coming with you guys. We did the regular as-needed substitute rate was $95 a day. We increased that to $120 for 20 plus days. We went to 120, moved that up to 130. Excuse me. The former D12 retired teachers, we had that at 120, so we moved that up to 135. And full-time subs, we have people who come in every day. We brought that up to $145 a day. We did hire full-time subs. Hire is such a strange word. It's not really hiring, but we did employ them to come in on a daily basis. If they don't come in, they don't get paid. If they have to take time off, they don't get paid. But we've scheduled them to come in to fill it every single day. We've got 2 scheduled at each location now, which still isn't enough. It's really difficult, obviously, due to COVID concerns, quarantine concerns, isolation, and of course, symptoms. We don't want our staff coming with symptoms at all, so it makes it very difficult where in the past people would come in with any type of symptom, now it's really become an issue. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. We're going to keep an eye on it, and we're still recruiting. We hired 6 in the last 2 weeks, and we're going to have a couple more now. So.
Now, sorry to jump back, I guess raising or increasing those rates, I mean, that's just probably a small little thing to help. I mean, that's not the end all be all, because I'm sure some of the neighboring districts have numbers that are similar, if not more, and they're still in that struggle too. So this is just to give somebody that, if I have a choice, maybe I can go here versus there.
You know what, and that did happen, and it really what kind of preceded this was we had an individual said, well, is there any way you can go just a little bit higher because you're closer, we really, I really want to work for you guys. In fact, again, it was kind of just a little nudge that we needed, and it wasn't a huge change, but it was just enough to get a couple people at the door. And it also gave a nudge for some of our retired staff to come back forward. And whether it was that or the fact that they just know we're struggling, we have to have some people to return. So you're right, it might be just a scratch, but at least it's helpful.
At least it gets a little bit.
Yeah. Also, personnel, our bus drivers are obviously another shortage that's nationwide, and we've seen it all over the newspaper. And again, I don't remember if we talked about this before about how New Jersey had to bring in the National Guard to bus some of their students. We are not in that position, thank goodness. We do have absences for various reasons, including COVID, but we do have a very stable crew, a lot of which have been here for many, many years. So we're very grateful that they stuck it out with us. We've been working really hard to hire additional staff, but again, it takes a while to train somebody. A lot of people are coming in with no experience in CDL. So we're fortunate enough that we do have an in-house training program, and we kind of dangle a carrot and saying, well, while you're training with us, we'll also have 8 on our buses. So, because we see need with that anyway, especially during our midday when the pre-K and kindergarten kids coming and going. We found that that's been attractive to them, so at least while they're training, they're able to do that as well. So, we're getting by. It's not perfect, but it's working. And I would say we're not in nearly the position that other districts are. So I think having the smaller numbers goes a long way too. The last thing I wanted to mention, this is something that we're looking to do now. We found that we've had some increases in contact tracing specific to our lunchrooms, mainly at elementary more than anywhere. And so we talked about how can we fix this problem, and the biggest thing is we need to spread them out. And that means we need to move to other spaces outside of the cafeteria. For just example, we're looking at some of the different pod areas, but we can't do that with the staff that we have. So we're looking at bringing in lunchroom supervisors. It will be a minimum wage, basically, similar to what our food service individuals are making, which is less than paying a supervisor to come in for a teacher or a teacher assistant to work in, bring up the language and junior high cafeteria just to help during that time. So that's something we're going to be looking for moving forward. We'll probably do tomorrow. You guys will pay with that, of course. Again, we're going to listen to our lesson plans. And just hope to kind of minimize some of those exposures for the kids as well. Do you have any other questions about that? Okay, moving forward to operations. As you may or may not recall, we had the really good HVAC project scheduled for yesterday for Columbus Day, and thank goodness they beat the rain. They got most of the work completed in time for that. They set all of the day package RT units up on buildings. They frame cranking it. It went really smoothly. They just have a little bit of cleanup work that they were working on today. We'll have a little bit more to go in the next week or so here. Really just for putting the control components together, just making sure everything works. Fortunately, the weather, they got the big areas, the cafeteria and the hallways things in order, just putting some good controls for the classrooms in place. So the weather is pretty perfect for right now. So we don't have an issue with that. We expect that to wrap up, and we'll see probably the final news for that in November. One other thing I wanted to mention under O&M, the school maintenance project grant is opened up again this year. If you recall, we received one in FY20, and that was for just what we did with the J restroom. And we applied for this again this year. Our next roof section that we have slated to do is this roof right here. And that's already budgeted for, so any extra money we can get through this grant obviously will just save us funds in the long run. So that's been a fight for already. We'll know probably, I hope, before the close of the calendar year whether we get that or not, but at least hopefully we can get it. If not, we'll take one trip to us. And like I said, we've also seen in other areas for paper. I said, oh, I better check out a paper bin. We can get styrofoam lunch trays, which is good because we do provide regular ones, at regular, of course. But for our paper, the estimated delivery for a regular paper supply order is 4 to 8 weeks. So, needless to say, we plan to tackle it as an admin team. We better think about the things that we're going to need for this year because there's definitely a backlog. That's all that I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, you try to micro. Repeat today. Let's not forget it. So.
Okay. So, usually we'll go over numbers from the beginning of the year, so special education enrollment by grade levels. There's a comparison for the 2021 to the 2021 and 22 school year. Total for this year is 292 students, which is 17% of our population. It is a little higher than the average. So really hoping that the new MTSS process will help us with that and bring the numbers down so that hopefully getting the kids in and out if it is just a skill deficit area and not a disability. End of the year last year, we had 320 students. 16 of those students took their diploma. So the other difference would be kind of moving without between them. As far as Ringwood, they're at 73 students total right now. Jess has 57. The junior high is at 67. The high school is at 81. And there's an additional 6 that are in transition. That's the 18 to 22-year-old population that we still serve. Ringwood is down by 25 students, but again, pre-K is always our influx number, so as the school year kind of rolls through, we tend to grab a little bit more in that speech and language area, as well as any of the early intervention students that come in and do services that way. And then typically, once that February parent-teacher conference hits, is when we start to do the domains for any students in second grade that have been through the MTSS process, and then we'll go into special education evaluation. So, pretty typical. I'm not too concerned on numbers there. Any questions on numbers? Pretty typical for disability categories. I know we've talked about this a lot. Give a little bit of the definitions on the different categories. There are 14 categories that you can utilize for special education. 3 of these we do not use right now currently. So these are the ones you see mostly: deaf, blindness, traumatic brain injury, and orthopedic impairment surgery that we've not used in my 20-something years being here. So, as far as disability by building, again, this is only the primary disability. So students can have a primary, which would be the one disability that kind of is the overarching cause for why they're having difficulties in school. But there can be a secondary and even a third at times. So by primary disability, obviously, developmental delay, as you read, that is only up to 10 years of age. And then typically, once they turn 10, we'll reevaluate. That'll go over either to a specific learning disability or speech and language impairment. So you'll see that the DD is only at Ringwood and Jess, because that's our age. As far as trends, autism definitely has been diagnosed more in the last 5 years. Previous to that, I think we saw a lot of ED, and prior to that, probably a lot of earlier this year in the beginning of CTPAs, because autism is, well, it's a spectrum. We're seeing a lot more of the behaviors manifesting itself as opposed to more significantly autism child. So we want to make sure our teachers understood what those behaviors look like and how you handle that, because it is different than behaviors of a child without autism. Any questions? Outplacement facilities. So we have both public and private facilities that we use for our students. And again, we utilize these facilities when our in-house programs are not sufficient. So either the child may need a smaller class size, which everyone would and just we may not have at the component, or they need an increased staff. So a lot of the outplacements, the private ones have more either counselors or either therapists, things like that can help the students than we do in the public facility. So these are the ones we're currently using. These are the ones outside of Park and Pratt that we've used for the years that I've been here. I have gotten great feedback from my parents who utilize in Park and Pratt right now, so glad to hear that. So there's a total of 20 students. Last year there was 21, so we're still probably staying average. We do have one student who started to transition back into our junior high school. So they'll be part day there and part day with us to make sure that things are going well, and then by a half year we'll end up transitioning full time. 3 of those numbers are in our transition program, so we don't have an in-house transition program, so we utilize this one. Huntley is doing one, and one at Alexander Lake, and PACT is the other one. There was a new law passed where previously when the child turned 22 years of age, that was the day that the bus stopped coming. Now the IEP team has to determine if that student needs to stay through the rest of that school year. And the school year ends at that June 1, it does not continue into summer school for them. So, at this point, I don't have anybody transitioning out this year, but next year we do. Woodstock, Clay, and Huntley are obviously public schools, the rest are all private schools. There is reimbursement for private facilities. It changes pretty much yearly the percentage of what we would get back. Of course, these all require typically special transportation, so you see those bills often. But then again, that also does get reimbursement. And then depending on how we choose them, some work on externalized behaviors and others work on internalized behaviors. It really depends on what we're seeing with the child. And then we kind of usually have the parent go out and visit 2 or 3 of the different schools. They do an intake meeting, so the child has to be kind of willing to go to these schools, and they want to make sure that it's a good fit. So they're not just going to take the child just because we're asking for it. They want to make sure they're going to be able to actually help them. They're all have been really good with contacting with us. Some of them have my cell phone numbers and text me often. But they're usually really good about saying, like, if they've met their level system, let's, start a transition back, or we need a meeting here, and I can go out to the buildings as much as we can. So we like to get our face out there so they know who they're working with. And these kids are all still our district children, so we go out there and service them that way as well. Preschool for all. We have 2 new teachers this year. So a lot of training on the ECRS, which is that state kind of rating report card for them, I guess, and then the training process. So they're learning the Dial 4, they're learning the actual process of how you go from somebody calling us to getting them into the school. We have 77 of 110 placements currently filled. We do have trainings taking place monthly. We are actively taking children in on a monthly basis. 14 of those 77 kids have IEP or receive some kind of service from us. 11 of 77 actually are English language learners, so we're seeing an increase in that, which is on the next slide. This year, there is no early childhood education classroom, and the difference between that and pre-K or preschool overall is that that is a classroom of all special education students. You must have the IEP in there. That classroom is your most restricted classroom, so that is the most significant needs. Previous years we had, we started with 1 classroom and then we ended up having 2, and it goes by year, so it fluctuates on what students do you get in, what needs do they have. Right now that's kind of moved, so we're ALPS programs, classrooms at Greenwood currently. So we do not have the need for the early childhood classroom, but we have shifted it up to the ALPS program right now. If we find that we need a classroom, then we have the staff that's actually able to teach it. We would just kind of reallocate the resources of the aide and the teacher to a classroom, and then kind of they would spend the other day, half their day in the classroom. Right now, we're just servicing the kids in a blended model. So they are actually in the classroom, and then the teacher, if he pulls them out for small group sessions, and then they're back in. So it's a little bit more fluid as it should be. Looking ahead, we are state monitored next school year, so kind of important to get that one through our new teachers this year. Within the next 5 years, we actually have an entire new pre-K staff. All teachers and most of our aides, I believe, actually. We have Dr. Seidel retiring in 2023 and the PA in 2026. So, kind of important to get these two newbies kind of up and running because they're going to be the full staff in a couple years. And then we continuously monitor enrollment and student needs and staffing needs and things like that. Like I said earlier, interventions been kind of light this year. So we're going to use 1 to 8 to 10 kids per annum we have offered. So this depends. Any questions on that? English learners. This is where we need to kind of really keep our eye on. So typically we have our 2021 access scores. We do not have them. So we were allowed an extension on the testing time frame last year due to COVID. So that has kind of backtracked into your scores and renewed as well. They're saying November 8th. Right now we have preliminary scores. We're not showing anybody who's exited, which means our numbers are going to go up. Currently, we have 63 students who qualify for services. That's an increase of 11 students just last year. We'll break down that. Greenwood is your most, as you would expect. That pre-K, 11 of them are from pre-K out of the 29. If you hit them hard at Greenwood, hopefully then they would kind of pass the test with their 4.8 or above, and kind of your numbers should be going down lower as you go up in age. This is our first year out, and thank you, Carmen, for slight. It was just holding me on my terminology here. So it's a student with limited or interrupted formal education. So the student who moved in outside of the United States, history of their education has either been extremely limited or interrupted. So you go to school, you come in and work on the family farm, you move, you go to school, you come, that like that. Moving here, no English whatsoever. So you are, no matter what level you're at, learning basic reading and math skills. So this is intensive skill development for a child. That's more time and effort on Carmen's part as well. So looking at what our needs are for the EL population, it is, or should say ML, because it's multilingual learners. It's changing and it's increasing as we're changing. So previous, I think our families that would do their home language survey that there was another language in the home, there was usually also English in the home. We're now finding that there is no English in the home and our kids are coming with 0 English language. So you're starting with letters, letter sounds, basic words, things like that. So more intensive needs are coming. Remember, we are required to monitor our students for 2 years after they pass the access test as well. So if they pass the access test, they're no longer receiving the services. However, if we see that their grades are kind of the F and D range, we're required to pull them back in for services. So you monitor for 2 full years after that. And then the move-ins and move-outs of districts. It's pretty common for families sometimes to be moving about, but that creates gaps as well. So again, part of the pass the access test is a grade level is they're trying to moving in and out, you're getting different education in different districts, things like that. And the state is moving to what's called their progress to proficiency, which is going to be their compliance monitoring now for EL students. So they're getting a certain time frame of when a student enters to when they should be exiting in order to pass their monitoring.
I have a quick question. What, that student that you talked about, the slight?
Yep.
So what does their day look like? Like who is with them?
You know what? So you are not allowed to put a child like that into a special education class.
Okay.
So they're in general education classes. So we try to pair them up to students who speak their language as best as we can so that they can kind of help. He just spent his first hour with Carmen. And we're basically doing, like I said, very basic. When I was there, matching, almost like kindergarten words and words to a picture. Teaching him how to use Google to translate from his language to ours. To kind of cross, over the language barrier of, okay, I know that word in my language, but now this is a living language, things like that. He does sit in, he's a student. We do have as his math class with the tuning running, what's that math class called again? Big Ideas. So he's kind of doing, we have him kind of working on individual programs rather than, he doesn't understand the language, just doing an algebra class with letters and numbers is not going to work. So he basically sits in the classroom, can hear the English language, but does his own programming there. We kind of took out like world histories and things like that. So he's in an art classroom, he's in a Spanish classroom, he's in a math class, things like that, to fill the day. And then we, like I said, try to pair him up so that students can see who language with him, so it's not isolated as only thing. It's not to pass high school classes or to anything like that.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah.
The next question, like, okay,
Yeah.
so how do you get him on
It's
track?
not to immerse
Is there a
them.
graduation?
Immersion in our language, so it's just immersion right now, to try to learn the language. So as
Great.
far as,
Oh, great.
that's different, because age-wise and grade-wise are different for him. So right now, we just have a ninth grader, because past education would not put him to his age-wise grade level.
Sure, I guess that gives me an understanding of at least we got 4 years to
Not
build.
typically, they're coming to immerse themselves in a language, and then usually they'll get enough English to maybe get the GED and go on from there. They would never learn enough English in the time period of 4 years of high school in order to be able to get 23 credits for graduation. So sometimes if they come in with some, but that's not the case for this particular child. So, yeah. It's interesting. Different. Don't learn something new from her every day, for adults. So just like graph-wise, over the 6 years we've been doing this, Carmen started with us in 14-15. We added a second teacher in 18-19. Our student enrollment has more than doubled in these last 6 years. So definitely look at this population being our next needy area for staff. We also have the need of translating and interpreting. So translating is the print, interpreting is the verbal. So there is the other component for any IEP meetings. You have to have the translator, and there are now new stipulations as to the requirements of that type of person. So whereas Carmen used to do it for us, and if she worked with the child, she's not allowed to do that anymore. So we now utilize a service to do that for us. And then as far as translating, the paperwork right now, we use Google Translate, which is not perfect. But then also all of our forms should be. So a lot of our field trip forms, Carmen was able to do in Spanish. But they really, we have like 17 different languages, they really should be in all these different languages for parents to understand what am I putting my signature on. So there's a need in that area as well. And then right now, just contacting the parents. Our nurses are contacting them, our offices are contacting them, and our teachers, again, we utilize the services to make those connections. So a lot of different things that go along with, field populations that we're kind of new dynamics for us that we're kind of need to go with the flow. So that was my big question. I talked to Dan about this would be definitely potential of looking for another staff member for next school year. So population and needs, translating, interpreting, and all of that. But it's so good. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen.
Yeah, above it, yeah.
He's gonna plug them all in until something works. Get it. Terry, we all have to also use one.
Yeah.
Yeah, picture in your mind.
Yeah.
Screen.
Oh, you're, okay, good, no, you're perfect, okay. Although I will keep clicking this and nothing will happen. Oh, it's a mess. Oh, is this PDF?
I think so, I just took it out of the board packet.
Okay.
Now I think I've got it together. Alright, so just a quick curriculum update. I've got some data and a little demonstration of our program called Bring to Minds that they asked me to show you. First, our fall 2021 benchmarking data in reading and math. Fall is always a baseline. I just want to remind that comparing to other years really isn't appropriate. It's like this is where the kids start and then we go winter, spring. So I think we all know that the last year and a half was nuts in terms of learning. So I was actually very happy to see that our results were actually pretty good coming in. So that's why I was like, really? Yes, really. Remember that this year Ainsworth was not given to everyone. It was much more useful in what we're doing right now in the MTSS teams in terms of data to look at that as a what specific deficits are the kids having, and as a measure of did they just not take the math test seriously, that their Ainsworth were fine. So it's basically like a, and again, like a diagnostic, what's really happening with this kid. So again, MTSS teams are using the Ainsworth data that they have in math to determine academic issues. And again, our results were pretty good. Good in terms of, I saw a lot at the median percentile. So I'm like, okay, this, in terms of a year after the year and a half that we just had, we're in a pretty good spot in terms of quality. So just to give you context, if you said look at those median percentiles, if you had a grade level with a median percentile above 50, that was pretty good. If you had below 50, that means the scores were below the mean grid. And then we had those in 4th and 5th grade math and 3rd grade reading. However, we all know that we still have students that need support within those grade levels. And what we've done, I'm going to show you in a second, is we've uploaded all this data into Branching Minds, and students were identified in Branching Minds, which you'll see in a second, as a potentially needing to tier 3 supports. The MTSS teams, led by the coordinators, are doing that work to identify which students really need that support. You know, how many kids, sorry, it's so hard for me to do this in math. How many kids are really needing those supports? How many kids the math score was just an off day for them? They didn't take it that seriously. So we had to basically go, what kids are actually in tier 1? Which kids are actually in tier 2 and 3? So that was the purpose of the teams, the coordinator led those efforts. We also see in Branching Minds what percent of students are at each tier level. And that's a piece of data that we really didn't have until last year. So it's really kind of amazing that it'll do that for us. Just so you know about, and you've seen the RTI triangle before probably, or the diamond line on the website. Typically you want 80% of your kids at tier 1. That indicates that core instruction is working and that kids are learning. And then you have different percents at tier 2 and tier 3. You want your least amount of kids in tier 3, meaning that intense support. So
Yes, did we have less than 80% at a lot of grade levels? We did. But after the year and a half we had with remote learning and then hybrid learning, really that's the main source of those numbers. So I kind of want to show you what Branch of Minds is telling us. So again, it's our data warehouse. So we can stick all our data into one spot and we can see a whole picture of the whole child. That's really the advantage to this. So I gave you a little overview link to their website if you just want to take a look at it. It really makes it easy for our teams to look at a student holistically. It allows us to set our own tier levels. So the tiers that you see are based on our own MTSS handbook. It also has very neat tier reports and tier movement. There's a lot of data in there that's actually helping us. And they also have an intervention library containing research-based supports. One of the things about MTSS is the interventions must be research-based, because if a student needs specialized services, that's the requirement of the law. They have to have that. This library, they've done all the research for us on these supports. Now, they do group it by how strong the evidence is, so that does give us a indicator. So what you're going to see is a demo account. It's not our actual data, so you're going to see all sorts of stuff in there. This is the account that the company uses to show people. So you may see some stuff that's a little weird and off. That's just because that's the account that the company uses. They were letting us play in it. So it's like their sandbox. And so currently we only have math and reading, but you're going to see all the triangles full and all sorts of stuff. We have math, reading, and we have some SEL data in there too. But what you're going to see is what it can do. By the way, we're also currently working with the Branch of Minds team to really get data in, especially at the high school, like the old SAT data and the PSAT data. It's a little rough now because we didn't take the PSAT last year for our younger kids. But we're trying to work to at least get the SAT. SAT data in there. All right, so what you're going to see, and that's my little cheat sheet here. Come on.
The link should work on PDF.
That link is to the main site, it's not actually to the demo.
Oh, yeah, that was just our generic.
Yeah, that's just so you
one,
can see what the heck I was talking about.
It was, yeah.
You know, go over there.
Did you look? So, did you look at the people here? That's what it's here. So they have their picture.
Again, what you're going to see is like everything it's capable of. You're getting stepping to baby steps in. This is brand new. MTSS in this process is brand new. So we're kind of going to take a little at a time to get it all in there.
Yeah, I think one of them wanted to be a ninja.
Yeah, it's like that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Computer. You're right. Are you done with it? Yeah. Give this back to her. This is what we see, again, we don't see all. We see lots of triangles and we see kids. And everyone has their own building and their own kids. I think the interventionists and the NFS are cool, you can see everybody. But this is again the demo. So what you're going to see is students classified into different tiers, and that was based on our streamer data. So we took the map, it's very cool how I can do that. I just go, you need the map, and these are my percentiles, and then it tiered them on. So that's really nice. on a student, and I chose one that someone would not continually mess with over and over again. Because this is their demo account. So the top kids tend to get quite used. Sorry, I'm making you sick, I'm sorry. I'm almost there. Maybe. Sorry, I gotta find some more. Is that everything right now? So, this is when you're not in your machine. Yeah, it's real loud. Search for users like this. We'll just do. So if you look at a student overview page, that's a little bit. So there's actually two demos. There's one with the desk available and this one I practice, of course, and the other one. But this is what a student would, or we see for each student. You see, we have map, we have Spanish version and then map. So our kids, you see this for our kids. I didn't put all the years back to 2015, but I did put like at least 3 years back so we could get a sense of where the kids were. When we were in data meetings and we saw kids scored like 20th percentile and looked at the profile and saw even in the 70s or 80s, we're like, hang on a second. And then we looked at the aims. So it was really neat to have it all in one spot and dig in different areas for it. Because in math, when you have to dig for different years, you have to pull up a separate report for each year. So this gives it all the way across the board. The DESA Mini, that's our SEL screener this year, so our students would have that. And then I go through into that as well. And then they have generic screeners for speech and writing. So we have to provide those. So then you can see he's getting progress monitored and reading in math. Our progress monitoring data is actually entered in AimsWeb, and Branching Minds automatically puts it into Branching Minds for us. So I can sign a little data to agreement, you can see that. So the interventionist doesn't have to do double record keeping. We're still using AimsWeb for all of that, because that's what AimsWeb is really good at. And then it feeds the data into the system. And again, I just want to emphasize, it's a one-stop shop for all of the kids' data that we use. This was, by the way, developed, if you couldn't tell, by an interventionist. The other thing we can do, and again, we're still working on developing, still working on training teams in the MTSS problem-solving process. That means you don't just try one thing with a child and then go, oh, didn't work. Brandon, take it away. That's not how it works. So that way, we can actually log what interventions we have, and we can see how well they're working with the progress we did it, but then we need to flip. If it's not working, maybe we need to adjust the intervention, maybe we need to adjust the intensity. So if that doesn't work though, before we get to plan, there's something called an insight survey. This is something I remember when they were showing us, friend, both of us went, at the same time. Because again, you can tell this was developed by someone who did this work. So if we need more information, for example, for reading, the insight survey is actually very specific questions. Again, we would only do this after we tried something with the child, but we don't know what else to do. So let's get a little more information. This would be sent to the homeroom teacher or a teacher. If it is lengthy, we don't want to just send it out all the time. You look, this one's 20 questions, and you've got the math one is 34, but they're very specific. And the one thing I like about the system is that it actually tells the teacher, here are some examples, here's what you need to put here. So it's not this vague data. So anyway, here's the results for this guy. So you got some red areas. You look. And then it tells you what they answered. Answered none, often, sometimes, always, whatever. So So we really like that. We're like, that's something we need more data, and then we can pass that on to Fran. And that's what she would need to get going on evaluation. So our MTSS teams right now, they're in various stages this summer, about to start, some have started, are actually going to look at, or start to enter intervention plans. So here's how they do that. I'm going to show you what a plan looks like. Let's stick with breathing. That was a little slow. It wasn't. When you click on it, you're going to see the plan that they entered, and this is what our teams are entering right now. Again, we're working on consistent data entry within buildings and across buildings. And I've been asked several times, because teachers get put stuff in here, I'm like, let's, for accuracy of data, I just want to do 2 and 3 teachers put stuff in here right now. Because if teachers, nothing against teachers, but we get all sorts of data that we didn't need. So here's what a plan looks like. You can put in some background information. It actually includes their tier history. We have it updated in here. And all their screener scores. This is their progress monitoring chart. If you look, they use the Gates and Kennedy phonics. And already, you can do spot me. Wow, there's lots of interventions for this workout. And obviously, I don't think you can see anything that's sensitive for us. But when they do the plan, it does require them to set a goal, which is what we really like. What is the specific goal and outcome? They're going to learn all the letter stuff. They're going to work on vocabulary to improve the reading. And then progress measured by that assessment. Again, this support kit has been used and used by people in them also. But really, then it talks about their progress monitors. Here, we're going to monitor them. I tried to pick one that did scroll. Interventions and supports. So what's that? What's how often? You notice this is how many plan minutes. So it actually, when you set the plan up, it has them put in how many days a week, how many minutes. And then it assigns it to someone. So it actually assigns it to an interventionist in the system. And then they don't show it here, actually they do. There's 14,784 overdue to-dos in the demo. But it actually gives them a to-do list, and every Friday we email them, you need to do this, remember? Remember to put this in? So we like that, we can assign it to an interventionist and review to-dos. Then we as admins can see what overdue to-dos there are.
Terry, the interventions that are there, were you able to put what ones we're already using in?
Yes, I'm going to show you that in a second, how it works. So that when they do a plan, there actually see these pluses, they actually put the plus. And they enter the goal. Who's going to evaluate it? That's usually the interventionist, or the coordinator. We even do the school using assessment personnel. So with the interventions, when I click the plus, the screen doesn't come up, it takes you to the library, which is like a Pinterest, basically, of interventions. Now, when you do that from a child, like a specific child, you notice your child is up there in the search bar. If you look, it actually filters it out. He's at tier 3 for reading. He's at 4th grade. Use just, you can use it anytime. There's score, in other words, when it says evidence or selected, all types of evidence, strong, medium, promising. And then English proficiency is development, so it realizes the English. So it's only going to pull the interventions that fit in. Because it's a huge library. So if they were to add phonogram flashcards to this plan, they click on it and see this add plan. They must add interventions from the library. All the ones we currently use are in there. So, but we're encouraging more of the use of the specific strategies. Yes, some kids need a program if they need extensive teaching of skills, especially since last year they missed some. But some of our students are struggling just because, I used to say this when I was teaching, I go, you guys don't come pre-built with how to learn. Sometimes we have to equip you with strategies. And there's strategies in there. Sometimes they just don't know how to learn. You have to kind of go, oh, you're learning about this type of text structure, maybe you need a concept map. Use a concept map. They need tools in their toolbox. So I think that's a huge mindset shift that we're doing. Is going, it's not that they can't learn, it's just you have to equip them with some skills, with some tools to do that. So the cool thing about this is it gives you a summary, why would we use it, and then it gives you directions. Extensive directions sometimes. They really leave nothing like, still you have to kind of go, what would be appropriate for this child? So you have to do that based on the data, and that's where the art and science of this comes from. But it also lists reasons. And that's directly on these websites that it shows that this type of training will work. It also gives downloads and websites, videos on how to use it, and different things. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for interventionists and our coordinators. Again, you're still going to have some discussions about what is appropriate for this child. So that's usually the team figure out. So that's how they use it for like a kid that might be needing tier 2 or tier 3 services. But we are actually on a couple buildings, there's something to show you one more. Regular teachers can come in, let's say their job is tier 1. They need to differentiate and support the students in learning. So I've shown, I think, all buildings to one. They can come in, type the student's name in a box for multiple students. If they're going, these kids are not getting, how to write fractions. They can actually type the names in the box, pull them up, and there is, here, a search. So you could actually search fractions, and then it will narrow the library down. And still, again, art and science, which one's the best for these students, but it can give them ideas for activities for differentiation. Again, they're all research-based. Again, I think the biggest hurdle we have to overcome is that some of these strategies are research-based to help kids learn. And do the kids have a deficit? They miss instruction? Maybe a program is appropriate. Do they just need skills to equip them and knowing how to learn? Then they need to be able to use the strategies. All right. Last thing I want to show you is some of the reports that we can get. So there's all of them. We are not currently logging behavior incidents because we're doing it the way that we started pre-pandemic, just because we're so long with that. Not to say we couldn't ever do it, but we're not doing it. The ones that I wanted to show you are the tier level report, tier movement, and the intervention usage. So the cool thing about tiering at Escalante Middle School, you can come down, and I can automatically see Escalante Middle School is rocking it because they've got 80% or above. Their tier 1 is on point. With high school, we may have a different issue. Ooh, that would hurt. That would hurt me. So, a little bit of a different issue right there, like tier 1. We need to address tier 1 instruction. Our core curriculum is not working, either in instructional practice or we don't have a research-based program in this particular area. So that is very good. After we get some winter and spring data, we can see how well our MTSS process is working by tuning. Then we can see the shift in percentage. I'm meeting with all the coordinators this week, and I'm telling them, I'm looking at the tier, I go, you guys should too. You should look at your current tiers, and we're going to see, are we moving things? That's really the goal. Knowing that, and I always tell them this too, this year we're changing a lot. It's our learning, get our processes in order here. So, you look, and that's, wow, 47.7. So, it shows you the movement, 89. Let's go back to that high school. Ooh, there we go. You see how they're chipping? Yeah, not perfect because this is sandbox, so it doesn't make sense. But we can see just by the number of green, you see the number of green went up, I don't know if I do, but the green went up. So that's what we can see and kind of measure our effectiveness. And again, our goal is to move tier, so if it's tier 3 to tier 2, tier 2 to tier 1, that's where we want to shift. Because again, tier 3 is very intensive, they're being seen every day. Maybe they don't need to be seen every day, there's a slightly different strategy, because maybe they have filled some learning gaps, working on strategies, so it really depends on the job. And then, the other one I wanted to show you, which this is where, that's the thing, I know this program is great because it has everything in one spot, but it's only as good as the data that's put in it. And that's why I'm really insisting the data is consistent across the buildings. And that's why only certain people can put stuff in right now. And we need to have it looking right and that we can interpret it correctly when we need to. Intervention usage. So you just saw how we put interventions to children from the library. There are paid things in there. I did budget in the Title I grant, I budgeted for this, and I budgeted for each building to have money to buy programs and paper-based interventions. So they are funded. Last thing I want to do is give them an unfunded mandate. So like here, you have money to spend if you need something for a child. So if you look, and this is math, here you look. So basically it says this is as an evidence level. So we're looking, are we using things at the highest level or at a level that is effective for the child? Also, I can see what percentage student population, how many minutes are planned, and but I can also see this. To us, this is the most important, is plan fidelity. What that means is, are you seeing the child how often you said you were, and putting this in place? And are you doing this according to what the research says the intervention says works? So if you're obviously, the intervention says you need 3 times a week, 20 minutes, and you're only going 1 day a week, they're going to know that because you have to log it. And if you're not logging it, we're going to see you need to do something. Either adjust the schedule or look how we can meet that child's needs. Thank you. And then I can see how many tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 students. Again, this is a demo, so it doesn't go all over the place. This has been, I looked at this report for the first time yesterday afternoon. It was very enlightening in terms of what we've already been doing and are we doing it fidelity. So just a limited number of people that are already put it in.
Fidelity part's more important than the special ed world. So when we fill out the intervention case to move somebody towards a specific learning disability, the fidelity part, you can't say, yeah, you have a disability even though I didn't do it the way it's supposed to be done. So that's where I'm hoping the MTSS process is going to reduce the number of special education students.
Yeah, by trying to catch them before they fall into that evaluation. Again, it's a great program, but again, I'm really hammering home, we've got to have the right data in there at all times. So that's why MTSS tier 2, tier 3 teams are the ones that are doing it right now. And then teachers, their own responsibility is to use the library. And if you send your insight survey, go out. And also the DESA, which doesn't, we use many as 8 questions. Literally, I watched you do high ticket and staff. With the DESA, however, if you do need more information on a child, there's the mini screener. All the screener tells us is if there may be an issue. There is a follow-up, much longer form that we may need to use to fill out that will tell us what the specific issue is. So that's the thing about a screener, it's telling us there may be an issue. And we get it. There's other reports that I won't show you, but we can see you can log family communication. Did you send a letter home? How often did you send a letter home? Teams are told to fill that out. You need to know when you're communicating with parents. Let's see, which report is something to fill out for us. And then cohort assessment, that's just I can see how grade levels do on like the map, but I'm like, I can see that in the map anyway. So that's how this what it is for us. This is a new report, and I'm anxious to see what this is. It's called Early Warning Indicator. We don't currently do do this. We don't currently share our attendance data and behavior data with Branching Minds, it's just the academic stuff. But if we did, we could get a report because attendance and behavior, there's a couple other factors, are an early warning indicator that we may have a behavior issue. So I want to learn more about that before I launch into that. Right now, I'm just trying to get a good idea of that special ed kids. But if you turn that on, but other than that, it's going to be good. So that's Branching Minds, and this is basically what our teams are working in at all times. And I love it because they're still, like our interventionists, they're still using systems that we currently have. So they're still up and running, and they're good for that. Just everything feeds into this one board.
Terry, I have a question. I know we've talked about it in the past, and I can't recall at the moment. So you're looking, when you're looking at some of those reports, and you're talking about moving from the tiers, from, you know, they're in 3, you're hoping that they're moving to 2, and 2 and 1. You can gain that information from the MAP test 3 times a year. What other tests, are there assessments or screeners, or the interventionists using?
So they're using Ainsworth. So anybody on the map that hits at our tier, like 25th percentile or below, they automatically Ainsworth, so we can get more information.
Okay, and then they can do that like whenever they
Yep.
feel that they've gained some.
Yeah, for progress, and then like, so that's like a screener, so they do the screener, and then I close the screener, but they can still progress monitor names anytime. So they can get, they didn't have to, if it's like fluency or number sets, they do that progress monitoring anyway. You really technically in best practice, one screener, that's all you need. Math has, if you want to get technical about it, math has, there's something called classification accuracy in screeners, and I can send you the research evidence, but it has, classification accuracy ranges from 0 to 1, it's kind of like probability, remember that in high school math, 0 to 1. Math has a classification accuracy of 0.8, which is pretty stinking high. So it's good at saying there might be an issue. So it's like, why, we only need one screener to tell us that. And then the Ainsworth can be used because they measure different things. So Ainsworth is more of a fundamental skill measurement. So it's like, okay, if it's a problem, let's make sure that it's not a fundamental issue here. So that's why we can do everybody.
What about for math?
We have Ainsworth now.
So as you're doing the interventions during the weeks, and every other week or every 3 weeks, you go in and you do a progress monitoring. And if the intervention is working, your progress monitoring should go up. If it's not working and you're staying steady, that's when you go back and you say, let's try different interventions. Are we not targeting the right thing? Is the intervention, do we need to increase instead of 3 days, we're going to go to 5? Are we implementing the intervention with fidelity? That's the first thing. So I think that's kind of what you were asking, how do you know?
Yeah, I guess I didn't remember that Ainsworth had math.
It did, and we had it my first year, but what the measures were, they were really horrible. They were super horrible at helping kids in measuring progress and what we needed to them, it's kind of forward shifted so much. They revised all of their math ones, they're much, much better. And again, we're still navigating those waters in terms of progress monitoring, but yes, we do have those. Yeah, just for the kids that need the math progress monitoring. So we actually do not purchase for every child. We purchase enough. We have it. Yeah, pretty powerful tool. Again, can't solve our problems, that's what so many teams discussion and doing problem solving, but at least we don't have to, we're not missing a piece of data because we can't find it in front of us.
Is this compatible with Skyward so that reports get to the parents?
It's compatible with Skyward in terms of grabbing demographic, like what the kids are rostered to be clever through Skyward, so we have that clever link. In terms of information to parents, yes, the MTSS teams are going to be sending that information home.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then obviously reports, NAP reports. And if a child takes the into a benchmarking, we send them home.
Any other questions?
Again, if you want the link or log in and play around.
Thanks for putting up with my
Technical issues.
Thank you. Thanks, Fran.
Only other business, back here 2 weeks from tonight, October 26th, for our next Board of Ed meeting. And then, as Annie said, November and December is just one meeting because of the holiday schedules. Motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.